There has been an interference by Beijing in our diaspora communities in opening the doors to replacement level migration. Is that hostile?
They'll attack people and then force those people to accept that it was their fault.
Is there a concerted effort by our enemies across the world, such as Iran, Russia, China? Are they infiltrating our country with this sentiment to make us weaker, to make us more dysfunctional? Because it's easy to beat, to control one of your enemies if they're already basically in a civil war or don't think they deserve to exist. Is there foreign influence here? You might not have wrote that in your book, but just generally.
Could I have a go at that, Harry?
Yeah, I was going to let you go first.
Yeah, I don't think so. Of course, one would imagine, yeah, it could be the case. There has been an interference by Beijing in our diaspora communities in Canada and Australia and so on. There's some interference, for example, control people here in Australia who keep an eye on Chinese students. We have lots of Chinese students here, for example. So there is some of that going on, but I don't think we can blame them, these foreign actors, on what's happening to the Anglosphere. I think we've done it to ourselves. It's been a domestic operation, domestic failure. And what puzzles me, and as a political scientist, I want to understand, is why our elites came to hate us. Now, before the Second World War, intellectuals were known for not being patriotic. George Orwell made that famous remark. He said, it's difficult to find an English person at university who actually is proud to be English. It was not fashionable back then. Of course, there are waves of to and fro, but we have had for many years now in Australia, and I'm most familiar with Australia, really a hostile elite, cultural and political elite, hostile. For example, they might disagree. So what do you mean hostile? And I would say, well, opening the doors to replacement level migration, is that hostile? Which other country in the world, and most of them are despotisms, voluntarily open the borders of the country to very different cultures and races to come in, and over time, it inevitably will drive the locals to minority status. Is that not hostile? And then another example of hostility, elite hostility, is multiculturalism itself, which really is a reverse ethnic hierarchy. We were talking about this earlier in this talk. Multiculturalism, from the beginning, was minorities with the left arrayed against the Anglo or white nation, because the founding nations throughout the Anglosphere were actually Anglo-Celtic. And then later on with immigration became more broadly European. So multiculturalism is actually an ethnic hierarchy with us at the bottom, us being replaced, us having no voice in multicultural politics. If we try to have a voice, it's called certain nasty names. So that's my take on what has happened. It's been a domestic breakdown for some reason, some unexplained reason. The elites have turned against us.
I'm a little more conspiratorial, my tinfoil hat on, and I tend to think there has. I agree with what Frank said, but I tend to think there's been a degree of overseas interference in that and pushing. From the Islamic point of view, that was my started really studying into the Islamic thing, and they have their their warfare is intensely psychological. Which people don't realize, if you understand the way it works, they're very psychological, and they'll attack people and then force those people to accept that it was their fault. That's the modus operandi of Muslims. It's like, we attack you, and then you have to admit that, well, if we hadn't have maligned your prophet, this would have never happened. So really, it's our fault. And this has hallmarks from that. Now, whether there's been other groups involved as well, possibly. I think I see this partly other groups joining in, like I say, in a kind of an alliance. But even prior to that, I mean, then we have if we go back to the end of the First World War, we had the communists in taking over in Russia. They had the Comintern, whose job was to get into different Western countries, and it was the West that was under attack, and specifically England, because we were pretty much the top of the tree. And so the Comintern came in, and they were subverting, university students and people. My mum was at school in the 1930s, and she said she remembers she had a teacher there, had a picture of Joseph Stalin up, and was constantly berating the little kids at school. The Russians are beating you. Look, you're trying to do maths. Look at this. This is pathetic. The Russians, they're working harder. They're beating you. Why are they? So why would a teacher be talking like that? Well, I think that there was a fair bit of subversion coming from the Russians, specifically the Russian communists or Soviets, you call it. Again, there's the Muslims and these. So you got the left and minority tribalists, as me and Frank would say, getting together in this unholy alliance. The left being supposedly fully cosmopolitan and not caring about ethnicity or nations, and they're in an alliance with Muslims and other groups who are intensely tribal. It's just this ridiculous alliance, and the only thing that keeps them together is hatred of us. So that's again slightly different from Frank's take, but I think Frank could probably agree with some of that at least.
Compatible.
I agree with both of you. Let me give you my examples why. So we talked about external influences. I think we are being influenced externally, especially Russia, China, but I think they haven't caused the problem. I think they're taking advantage of a homegrown problem. And of course, they're taking advantage. We're messing in other people's countries as we speak. This has always gone on. But why did it happen in England? And why did it start in the elite, the academics? And my theory, and I've got no evidence for this, it's just what I've read, and this is what sort of feels true to me. I think 100 years ago, we looked at Marxism, we looked at revolutions across the world. First of all, 200 years ago, we had the French Revolution, and then 100 years ago, we had the Russian Revolution. And I think the working class in this country let the elite down because they wanted a communist revolution, and the English people were not that way inclined. And I think the elite have always looked down upon the working class, because George Orwell talks about it. They look at the working class basically as scum, and they're embarrassed of the working class. So therefore, it's easy to penalize and look down upon them because of that. And I think that's the essence of this self-hate. That's why our elites always want to go to Davos, always want to join the European Union, always want to hand our rights, our powers over to foreign bodies, because foreign bodies are better than the working class. And they're always worried about the working class because they never vote and never want the same things as the elite do. Brexit is a great example of that.